You're listening to the Greeks Gridiron, live with Ethan Hristodoulou.
Welcome back, everyone, to more of the Greeks Gridiron. I am Ethan Hristodoulou, and today we begin an 8-part mini-series diving into the coaching staff of all of the teams within the USFL. We will go one team by one team each and every single show we go through. So today, we begin with none other than the newest team of the USFL, the Memphis Showboats. So my Showboats fans, make sure you comment down below as we're working our way through the video. Let me know your thoughts and opinions on the coaching staff for the team this year. How do you feel about kind of getting the rollover from the Tampa Bay Bandits of last season and some of the adjustments that they've made with the coaching staff going into Season 2 of the USFL? And for the rest of my USFL fans, if you have some thoughts and opinions or maybe some thoughts on your team, we'll go through all 8, so don't worry. We will talk about them at some point within the next couple of weeks as we get ourselves closer and closer to Season 2 of the USFL, but I'd love to hear your thoughts as well. So diving right into the thick of things, I'll first list off everyone that is on the coaching staff for the 2023 season, beginning with, of course, the head coach, Todd Haley, who was the Tampa Bay head coach last season. We have the offensive coordinator, Bob Saunders. Defensive coordinator is Carnell Lake. The special teams and tight ends coach is Frank Gans, I believe that's pronounced, Jr. We have James Saxon as the offensive line coach. We have Trey Jackson as the defensive line coach. Steven Thompson as the linebackers coach. Defensive quality control and DBs coach is Brock Marion, and then the offensive quality control and wide receivers coach is Yale Van Dyne, I believe is the pronunciation on that one, with general manager Dave Rosano leading the helm. So that is the coaching staff that we are looking at for the Memphis Showboats. I am personally going to dive through Todd Haley and then the 2 coordinators. As for the rest of the position coaches, I don't want to be here too long diving into everything, and I only have so much time to kind of prepare all this stuff. So we're just going to go head coach and the coordinators. I highly recommend, if you're curious, dive into these guys' careers, take a look at them. These are just kind of the cliff notes and some of the things that you should know about them as we get set for Season 2 of the USFL. And starting off with the head coach, of course, we have Todd Haley, the Tampa Bay Bandits head coach of last season, leading the team to a 4-6 record in 2022. This is a guy who comes in with an absolute load of coaching experience with 24 years in total within the pros. He spent time with the Jets, the Chicago Bears, the Dallas Cowboys, the Cardinals, the Chiefs, the Steelers, and the Browns through the entire NFL. So, I mean, this guy has been around the block and then some, not to mention a couple of stints now as head coach in the USFL with the Bandits last year, and of course the Showboats now this season. Some of his career highlights include being the offensive coordinator for that 2008 Arizona Cardinals team that met the Steelers in the Super Bowl. And then, of course, being offensive coordinator of the Pittsburgh Steelers for quite some time. There was a really strong stretch there from 2014 to 2017 where, despite kind of a rift between him and Ben Roethlisberger and their ideologies and how they wanted the offense to run, the team managed a 45-19 record combined from 2014 to 17, where it felt like Ben Roethlisberger was throwing like 500 to 600 passes a season. So you can expect we're probably going to see a heavy dose of a passing game through this season. You kind of saw it last year with the way the Tampa Bay Bandits operated going after Jordan Ta'amu in the initial USFL draft and how they were kind of building out their team. You were looking for like experienced guys who played in big schools, and they really wanted to go all out with that passing game. And then, of course, as for the defensive side of the ball, with Todd Haley having so much experience within the Pittsburgh Steelers organization most recently, and then, of course, his defensive coordinator being a Pittsburgh Steeler alum in terms of being an NFL player and as a coach himself, I think we're going to get a pretty decent flavor of Pittsburgh Steelers defense over here in Memphis this season. Now, looking into the coordinators, we'll start with offensive coordinator Bob Saunders, who himself pretty full of coaching experience himself. 15 years altogether with time spent within the Kansas City Chiefs organization, the Washington Commanders, the St. Louis Rams. He even spent some time with the Virginia Destroyers before going back to the NFL in Cleveland for a few years, and then wound up for the being wide receivers coach for the DC Defenders in 2020 in the second iteration of the XFL, and then being the Tampa Bay Bandits offensive coordinator last season, obviously being a rollover from the Bandits last year. That being said, like I kind of mentioned with Todd Haley, you're probably looking at a very pass-heavy type of offense. It was pretty clear what their goal was last season. It just couldn't really come to true fruition, and I don't really expect too many changes. I think that they're hoping that the personnel they have this time around maybe fits what they're trying to do a little bit better. But the Bandits offense last season sat at 32 passes a game. So you're probably looking somewhere along that ballpark within that same range. I mean, they were fourth in the USFL, but the three teams ahead of them all had 33 passes a game, so it was only one more pass. So you're essentially sitting at the top of the league there with amongst the most passing attempts per game throughout the season there. When you look at the quarterbacks in terms of just how much they were throwing the football in college as well, you kind of get a little bit more of this. Ryan Willis, averaged about 28 passes a game himself while he was in college. And then Brady White averaged about 31 passes a game. So based off the quarterbacks they have on the roster, guys that were throwing roughly within that same range as well, you can expect a heavy dose of the passing game this year. I'd be a little bit shocked to see them commit more to the run than they did last season. Although I will say that it is probably something they may want to consider just because going so heavy into the pass didn't really work out for them last year. Maybe it goes a little bit better this year with the personnel they have, but I would say maybe find a little bit more balance. But I feel like all signs are kind of pointing to we're going to see a bigger passing game as we saw last year from the Bandits, with this being the same pretty much from the offensive side point of view, the same coaching staff per se, at least with the guys that are leading the way there. I would be shocked to see too many changes in terms of philosophy. As for the defensive side of the ball, this is something I'm really excited to kind of see pan out here. Defensive coordinator Carnell Lake, he was the DB coach for the Tampa Bay Bandits last year, is getting a bit of a promotion now as the defensive coordinator of the team. This is a guy who is pretty storied in the NFL. If you don't know who Carnell Lake is, you go open up a history book and you'll find his name quite a few times within the NFL. He was on the 1990s All-Decade Second Team as a safety. He is also a Pittsburgh Steelers all-time team member as a cornerback, and he even locked himself up a first-team All-Pro in 1997. So somebody who was no slouch when it came to playing on the defensive side of the football in the secondary there. I think that with last season's kind of setup on defense, the way they kind of did things, I expect to see a little bit more of a shift towards a Pittsburgh Steelers type of defense. Like I mentioned, Todd Haley, having spent a lot of time over there in Pittsburgh on the offensive side of the ball, playing against that Pittsburgh Steelers defense in practice every single day, every single week for however many years it was that he was on the Pittsburgh Steelers team there as an offensive coordinator, you can expect with his experience with that, and then also Carnell Lake, who was defensive backs coach, from 2011 to 2017 on the Pittsburgh Steelers himself. I expect to see zone blitzing. I expect to see multiple fronts. And I'm expecting, based off of kind of the way the roster seems to be built out, you're probably going to see that similar 3-4 scheme, but I could also see them trying to keep themselves flexible and being able to run maybe even some 4-3 sets as well. Think like more like a hybrid type of front, something along those lines. Because when you look at the DNs and the way they've kind of structured out the defensive line, you have some really big defensive tackles, but then you have some guys that are sitting around that like 285-ish range or so, where you can have guys play in the 3-4 setup, but you can also have them maybe play in a 4-3 if necessary, and you have some lighter guys that are around that like 240 to 235-ish range, maybe even pushing closer to 250 in your more traditional like 4-3 defensive end size. So I expect to see the zone blitz. I expect to see that multiple front, and I'm honestly really excited because the Pittsburgh Steelers defense is one that it's like storied in the NFL. That 3-4 blitzing scheme that they do over there is it's an enigma, and it's consistently good year in and year out, but it requires some really good players and some smart players at that to really execute those defenses. So I'll be very interested in seeing how this team, in the second year of this kind of coaching staff here, albeit it's a new team, can maybe try to pull some strings and, get some guys to buy in as to what they're trying to do on the defensive side of the ball. Because when successful, that Pittsburgh defense, pretty darn good at what they do. It's all about confusing the quarterback, making them think one thing is happening, but hitting them and punching them in the gut with something else. So I'll be very interested in seeing if they're able to pull it off over there. But that's the coaching staff of your Memphis Showboats for the 2023 season of the USFL. Again, my Memphis Showboats fans, comment down below. How are you feeling about this team? What do you expect to see from them this year? And if you're somebody that's not a Showboat fan, but maybe a rival or somebody who's just excited about the entire USFL as a whole, like I am, let me know your thoughts. How do you think year 2 of this coaching staff is going to fare compared to the Tampa Bay Bandits of last year. I would love to hear your thoughts on that as well. But that is it for me. I appreciate you for hanging out. And if you made it to the end of the video, my cat Gravy stopped by to say hello from me and him. Have a good one.